Just how many relationships do you think you have? What if I were to tell you there are more personal relationships than the sum of people within it? How is that? Well, that's what this video is going to be all about, so stay tuned. A relationship needs at least two individuals and be in close enough proximity to communicate with. This range can be measured from millimeters to kilometers, and in any relationship, there can be several combinations and strengths of different types of intimacy. Between two people, it looks like this. We have 5 primary levels of intimacy: sexual, physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual, and all at different strengths and levels. I rate this from 1 to 5. 1 being inappropriate, 2 is nothing, 3 needs work, and 4 is satisfactory, and 5 is great. Keep in mind, not all relationships need to be great. Many are quite fine being satisfactory or nothing at all. Please check out my mini-series on intimacy to fill in some of the context with what I'm referring to here. For the rest of this video, I will sum up these different types of intimacy in one line for simplicity's sake. Now let's add one more person to the mix, and we go from one separate relationship into 4. Each person has its own one-on-one relationship with each other, and together they form a new relationship consisting of the 3. Depending on the nature of the relationship, different strengths or of intimacy change. Maybe this is 2 parents and their child, or 3 best friends, or 3 colleagues at work. Intimacy is different in all 3 scenarios and at different levels. When they are together, their behaviors or levels of intimacy will change to accommodate this 3-party relationship, even though they have their own one-on-one levels when they are alone. So let's add one more to the mix, totaling 4 individuals and 7 different relationships. Remember, each person has a unique relationship with each person, and as a whole creates a new relationship. In fact, if you want to split hairs on this point, there could be 11 relationships, as any 3 of these members has their own 3-way relationship when the 4th is not present. But for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to calculate all the possible numbers going forth. Just keep in mind they do exist. Let's add one more person, totaling 5 individuals and 11 different relationships. Think of a 5-person family sitting at the dinner table having a pleasant conversation about the day they are having, or fighting over the remote and who gets to choose what gets watched that evening on TV. With 11 relationships at stake here, it's easy to see how and why not everyone gets the full scope and nature of each person's unique relationship. We have a traditional family trying to cope with the yearly grind, making the best of the lives they live, all the while 11 completely different relationships are taking place. Without proper education on these inner dynamics, it's no wonder why inter-family conflicts arise and go unsolved. For the most part, blood is thicker than water, so they will cope with each other the best they can. This doesn't mean that improvements can't be made though. The strengths of a family can improve with education, counseling, and mediation. Oh no, I said counseling. Some people might find that term uncomfortable, might even think it's unnecessary, but try to think of it for what it is, and that's someone with social technologies to solve issues in a proven way to aid a problem with a win-win outcome in mind. Therapy can take many forms. It just needs someone to assist in understanding what therapeutical plan a situation should take. The more we do this, the more problems we can solve or mitigate, and the less uncomfortable it will be to address future problems. I will address counseling and therapy in another video where I can explain what is wrong with the industry today, why you fear it, and how we can make it work better. I'll give you a hint. It has everything to do with relationships and intimacy that I'm talking about in these videos you're watching now. So let's move on and add one more person to the group, numbering 6 people and 16 different relationships. This time, we're going to go into the workplace. 6 people is a small, close team working together to accomplish some work-related tasks. Assuming they have been working together, they should have figured each other out and established a cohesion as a group, leveraging individual strengths and improving overall efficiency as a team to get the job done on time with quality results. But with 16 different relationships, it takes time to establish a rhythm, and one that will mold itself over time as the group grows. The longer a team can function together, the more efficient it becomes. Ever lose a member and have everything change? Remember, if we take one person out of the equation, we go from 16 relationships to 11. Sometimes it's for the good, but regardless, there is a change, and the group has to adapt. In some cases, this can be very destructive. So, the larger the group, the more relationships are tangled up amongst it, and eventually the brain runs out of room to figure out the dynamics of each person's relation to one another. We all become acquaintances the larger the group becomes. Nature's way of solving this is to rely on simplicity of stereotyping a larger group of people into a culture. If we become similar to one another, when we meet someone that is similar, it's easier to build rapport and trust. This is a shortcut to establishing communications with people you won't spend much time getting to know better. This is what I refer to as spiritual intimacy. You can know nobody in the group and know the customs and norms and what it takes for you to partake in the social environment so as to not arouse concern or stress amongst other members of this community. But what if you're trying to join a new group of people? Maybe it's a new job, a new social scene. Maybe you're trying to get married into a family and have all these new people to try to figure out. It can be very intimidating and daunting task. You have to figure out the social hierarchy and find your place within it. This does not always go so easily, and depending on your past experience and how your childhood went, well beyond your earliest memories, will determine how you might approach this. I could probably simplify this somewhat by inserting the classic introvert and extrovert persona we are already familiar with. I'll go into personality conditioning during childhood development in another video, but the quick point I'm making here is that we, as individuals, have quite a few methods of dealing with new people. Some people do really well at creating rapport with new people they just met, while others are better at developing deeper bonds with older relationships. Some people are just shy, but once you get to know them, maybe they're not quite as introverted as you might have thought. And maybe some of those social outgoing butterflies spend more time alone to themselves than you would have guessed. Regardless, the more people you need to associate with, the less processing power your brain has at establishing and maintaining deeper relationships. It may be unavoidable in today's cities with all the hustle of a larger community at large. Compared to our past generations before us, between our work and recreation, shopping and family lives, we are all in contact with more people than ever. It dilutes our attention we can give and share with the most important people, our friends and family. If I were to take your attention back towards the 5 different types of intimacy, it was only a few odd generations ago it was easier to establish and maintain rapport within a community. We lived and conducted ourselves within families to accomplish the tasks pertaining to our survival. Now we live in cities and travel vast distances to acquire work and resources we use in our daily lives. But biologically speaking, this is a new environment, and we're hormonally speaking not used to it. We need the bonds our ancestors had for our health and well-being. So I want to leave you thinking about your relationships and where you're at with them. You are the sum of the closest 7 people around you. How often and how close are they? What level and type of intimacy do you need? And who should you try to connect to and grow with to gain that? Should you adapt therapeutical strategies to improve those relationships? After all, by doing so, it will improve your health and well-being and shape you into who you are. You are very much self-motivated to pursue this necessity as it's part of your well-being. Also, be mindful of other people's relationships with other people and what levels of intimacy they might share. Assisting in growing intimacy in other people is fundamental for strengthening the bonds of family, friends, and colleagues. But I'll address that in a future video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you around.